3-minute soldering tutorial. First, you're going to need some basics: soldering iron, tip cleaner, and some solder. Leaded is best, lead-free is difficult to work with. I also recommend flux, but you don't need it. First, trim your wires. If they're a little bit long, you can use side cutters to trim them down. You're aiming for about 1mm along each one. Apply a bit of solder to each of your wires. This will make sure that they're covered in solder, and then they'll be taken nicely into the solder pads. Next, secure your piece. You can use blue tack, but I recommend investing in a helping hand. Get your iron hot. I recommend 400 degrees. This will let you work quickly, but it won't damage anything on your board. Make sure your tip is nice and shiny. If it's dull looking, it won't be able to get any heat into the pads on your board. Give it a scrape on the wire well in order to clean it up, so that it's smooth and bright. Add a little bit of solder to your tip. Place a tip against the pad and then tap the solder against the pad. You're looking to create a ball of solder on the pad. Another method is to add some flux onto the pads. Put some solder on your tip and press the solder onto the pads. Flux cleans the pads and lets the solder stick to them. Without flux, the solder won't stick. Turn your piece around so your wires are coming in from the side that you're going to want them on. Then heat up a pad with the soldering iron so that the blob liquefies. Push the wire into it and let go. Remember to hold it for a second so that the solder cools down, and then repeat for all the other wires. You're looking to have a blob of solder with the insulation of the wire pushed right up against it with no exposed wire. Optionally, you can clean up the flux with a bit of isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush. When you're done, it should look something like this. If you've got previous pad soldering on the board, you can just add some flux and then tap each pad with a hot iron. This will cause the solder to ball up and remove it from the spaces between the pads. Wipe off any excess solder using the tip of your iron. For other boards it's basically the same. Make balls of solder on all the pads and then heat them up and push the wires into them. Use tweezers if it gets a bit tight. You can readjust where you grip the wire to improve it. Grab the wire sideways and bend it down to get a better contact. Soldering is made easier by having the right tools. I recommend a decent helping hand, leaded solder with flux, brass sponge, high quality wire strippers, not automatic ones, side cutters, tack flux in a syringe, sturdy bent tweezers. Get yourself a decent iron like a TS100 or any of its clones like the Pine Sil. Also, solder wick is great for correcting mistakes.